Good morning, class. Open your book, chapter number 2, Kings, Farmers, and Town. So, today we will start a new topic, that is the Divine King, the divine theory of kingship. So, a significant development of the period under considerations was the growth of the divine notions of kingship. So, here the king, he derived their authority from God. So, God created the state and had given those born to royalty the divine right to rule. They were responsible to God and not to human beings. And you can see they are not accountable for their action. The kings started to identify themselves with a variety of deities in order to claim and maintain high status. In order to declare the kingship supernatural or divine, they held that they were descendant of the deities. In fact, they wanted to declare themselves superior and special to others with the help of the divine notion of kingship. The Kushana kings, who ruled over a vast kingdom extending from Central Asia to northwest India, they made best of this mean. Inscriptions and the textual traditions are the significant sources to reconstruct the Kushan history. We find the best glimpse of Kushan notion of kingship in their coins and sculptures. Huge statues of the Kushanas ruler were placed in a shrine at Mud near Mathura. Similar statues it has been found in a shrine in Afghanistan. In the opinion of some historians, the main objective of installing these statues in shrine was to represent the Kushana rulers as godlike. Many Kushana rulers had taken the title here Devputra or son of God. They did so perhaps having been inspired by the Chinese ruler. As Chinese rulers, they called themselves Son of Heaven. The 4th century AD witnessed the emergence of many larger states, including the Gupta Empire. Many of these dependent of Samantas. Samantas or the feudals, they had control over the land of the region and thus maintained themselves through local resources. They recognized the authority of the ruler, offered homage, and provide military support to them as per requirement. Often the Samantas would become kings, enhancing their power. The weak rulers were often forced to become subordinates of the mighty rulers. The Gupta Empire. During the early years of the 4th century AD, a new empire it emerged on the ruins of the Kushan kingdom in northern India, which is known as Gupta Empire. Undoubtedly, it was a great and glorious empire of ancient India. Under the patronage of this empire, the country experienced a political unification, registered an unprecedented economic and cultural growth, and an all-round development, thus drawing a golden period. Sources of the Gupta history, literatures, coins, inscriptions, and monuments. They are the significant sources of reconstructing the history of the Gupta dynasty. Sources, the literary sources here, the Puran, in particular you will see Vayu, Matsya, Vishnu and Brahma Puran, and the Dharam Shastra, in particular Narad Smriti, Brihaspati Smriti, the drama like Komudi Mahotsav and Devi Chandragupta, and the literary works like Raghuvansh, Manjushri Moolkalp, Katha Sarit Sagar, and Virhat Katha Manjari. They all furnish important information regarding the history of the Gupta period. The account of the Chinese traveler Fayan and Itsing also contribute significantly to reconstruct the history of the Gupta period. Inscriptions include both the public and the private ones. The public inscriptions, it consists of the prashastis or the eulogies and the land grants. The prashasti eulogize the attributes and the achievements of king and conquerors. The Prayag inscription of Samudragupta, which is engraved on an Ashokan pillar, is a remarkable specimen of prashasti. It provides us an elaborate description of the conquest and policies of Samudragupta. The Prayag Prashasti, more popularly it known as Allahabad Pillar inscriptions, it was composed by Hari Sen in Sanskrit. Hari Sen was the court poet of Samudragupta. He was the most powerful of the Gupta rulers. So if we talk about Prayag Prashasti, it was in the praise of Samudragupta. The coins also throw important lights on Gupta history. They tell us about the extent of the empire, the religious condition, and cultural growth as well during the reign of the concerned ruler. Almost all the Gupta rulers they issued gold coins in large numbers. It indicates that trade and commerce that was flourishing the state during Gupta period. The Gupta coins it bearing the image of Vishnu and Garud suggest that the Gupta ruler they were devotees of Vishnu's. The lyricist types coins of Samudragupta. It suggests that he had a great taste for music. Similarly, you will see Ashwamedh Prakram coins tell us that he had performed an Ashwamedh Yajna. The silver coin of Chandragupta Vikramaditya confirmed his victory against the Shak because the silver coins were in circulation only in Western India at that time. We come to know from the Allahabad pillar inscriptions that Samudragupta was a brave and ambitious ruler. He converted the small kingdom, which was inherited by him, into a vast empire by his policy of conquest. In line 13 of the Allahabad pillar inscription, it is stated that Samudragupta defeated three kings of northern India in the first campaign against Aryavart. In his second campaign, he defeated and killed all the 9 kings of Naga dynasty. Their kingdom was annexed into Gupta Empire. Samudragupta also defeated the 12 kings of Dakshinapad or southern India. He also conquered Atvik kingdom. The frontier state also accepted his sovereignty. The Allahabad pillar inscription suggests that the Kushan, Shak, Muruns as well as Sinhal, Sri Lanka, and the ruler of other island had sent their ambassador to Samudragupta court with valuable gifts and presents. We come to know from this pillar inscription that he was without an antagonist on earth. He, by his enormous good quality and good actions, had wiped off the fame of other kings with the sole of his feet. His heart was full of compassion and his mind had received ceremonial initiations for the uplift of the miserable, the poor and the suffering. So, the Allahabad pillar inscription, it also suggests that Samudragupta was a great scholar, a great musician and a talented poet. He was a great soul being the cause of the prosperity of the good and the destruction of the bad. His tender heart could be captured only by devotions and humility. A changing countryside, popular perceptions of king. So what did the subjects they think about their rulers? We should keep it in mind that in ancient times the ordinary people they rarely left accounts of their thought and experiences regarding their ruler. The ordinary peoples perhaps could not dare to do so under monarchical system of governance. The historians try to reconstruct the history of the ordinary people by examining the stories contained in the anthologies like the Jatak and the Panchtantra. So the Jatak, it tells us about the stories of the previous birth of Gautam Buddha. The number of the collected and published Jatak is more than 500. The Jatak, it throw significant light on the social and the economic conditions of the day. They also provide information about the political events in the age of Buddha. Panchtantra was authored by Vishnu Sharma. It also furnishes us with important information regarding the life of the ordinary people during the period under consideration. Hitopadesh, that is based on Panchtantra of Narayan Pandit, it also provides us a glimpse of the life of the ordinary people. A story known as the Gantindu Jataks, it tells us about the deplorable conditions of the subject, including elderly women and men, cultivators, herders, village boys and even animals, of a wicked king. The king neither took to the work of public welfare nor attempted to know regarding the problems and miseries of his subjects. There was a practice that the king used to go among the masses in order to know about their problems and difficulties. When the wicked kings went among the masses, he came to know that his people were fed up with him. The masses, they were criticizing the king as he neither attempted to make them secure from the dacoits nor from his own tax collectors. The people were attacked by robbers at night and by the tax collectors during the day. At last the people, they abandoned their village and went to live in the forest in order to escape from this situation. So we come to know from this story that there was no good relationship between the king and his subjects, particularly the rural population when we talk about the village. The masses had to bear the heavy burden of the taxes, and the agriculture was the main source of their livelihood. The kings demanded high taxes in order to fill their treasure. Consequently, the peasant wanted lived in fear. It also revealed that beside meeting the heavy taxes demand of the state, the peasant had also to meet the undue demands of the tax collectors. The economic condition of the peasants, it was not satisfactory. Their resources were too small to meet the demand of the state and the tax collectors. In order to escape from these miseries, they would run away to forest. Strategies to increase protection. Many measures were adopted in order to increase agricultural protection during the period under consideration. The state, they paid special attention to the growth of agriculture and would make arrangement for irrigation and water distribution to look after the interest of the farmer. So the arable land was extended by clearing the forest with the encouragement and help of the Mauryan emperor. The state would encourage people to inhabit new areas for the extension of the arable land. So here you will see the use of the plough was another source for increasing the agricultural production. From 6th century BC, plough was being used to plough land in the fertile alluvial area river valleys such as those of the Ganga and the Kaveri. The peasants started using iron tip plowshares to turn the alluvial soil in area having high rainfall. The introduction of transplantation in some part of the Ganga valley, it helped increase the production of paddy dramatically. It should be kept in mind the peasant had to work in the transplantation of paddy. So transplantation is used for paddy cultivation in area where water is plentiful. So you will see the seed are broadcast. When the sapling have grown, they are transplanted in water-lodged field. So the use of the iron plowshare resulted into a sufficient growth in agricultural production. However, the use of iron plowshares was limited only to a few parts of the subcontinent. You can see cultivators in semi-arid areas such as Punjab and Rajasthan, they did not use the iron plowshares till the end of the 19th century. So in this area, the iron plowshares were adopted with the beginning of the 20th century in hilly tracts in the northeastern, and you will see the central parts of the subcontinent. The cultivator, they practiced hoe agriculture and it was much better suited to the tarai. So another strategies they used to increase the agricultural production was to make arrangement for irrigation. So among these you will see wells, ponds and canals, they are made significance. The arrangement of the irrigational facilities was considered to be the one of the most significant duties of the king. Often the individual as well as the peasant community, they would organize construction of irrigation works collectively. So generally the king or the wealthy and the resourceful persons could arrange the irrigation work such as well canal individually. Differences in rural society. It seems that differences were in exist in rural society during the period. The use of new technologies resulted into a substantial growth in agricultural production. The whole rural community was not benefited equally by it. In fact, the growth in agricultural production led to the growth of differences among people, those who are engaged in agriculture. We find mention of landless agriculture labor here, small peasant as well as large landholders in contemporary stories, especially in stories of Buddhist tradition. It seems that the large landholder as well as the large peasant, they had started emerging important in the rural society. So in Pali text, the term Gahapati was often used to designate small peasant and landholders. The large landholders and the village headmen, they were very important or powerful figures in the society. They often exercised control over cultivators. The position of the village headman was often hereditary. We come to know from early Tamil literature, the Sangam text, that differences were in existence in South Indian society as well. It mentions various categories of people such as the landowners, the ploughmen and the slaves living in the villages. So the large landowners, they were known as Vellalar, ploughmen as Uzavar and slave as Adimai. So these differences were perhaps based on their differential access to the land, labor and some of the new technologies. So the ownership of the land had become very important in the society. It was often discussed in the legal text. So now we talk about the land grants and new rural elites. So in the opinion of the historian or the scholars, the grant of land were being made by the ruler from the early centuries of the Common Era. Such land grant in the we can find that mention in the contemporary inscription about the land grant. So most of these inscriptions, they were on copper plate, but some of them were on the stone. So these were given as a record of transaction to those who received the land. From the record that have survived, we come to know that in the beginning, you can see the land grants were made in particular to Brahman or the religious institution only. So most of the inscriptions, they were in Sanskrit. However, you can see a silent features of these inscriptions from the 7th century onward is that part of the inscription is in Sanskrit while the rest is in the local languages like Tamil or in Telugu. So according to the scholar or the historian, the Gupta emperor, okay, they had large land grants to the Brahman, shrine, vihar, monasteries and other institutions. In the contemporary inscriptions, we find mention of such land grants made by Prabhavati Gupta. Prabhavati Gupta was the daughter of Chandragupta II, who is more popular as Chandragupta Vikramaditya. She was married into an important ruling family, that of Vakatak. So the Vakatak was also very powerful in the Deccan. We should remember that according to the Sanskrit legal text, the women, they were not supposed to have independent access to resources such as land in the ancient India. However, we come to know from an inscription that Prabhavati had access to land and she made land grant as well. So she made grant of a village Danguna to a Brahman known Charnal Swami. Okay, according to historian, she might have been granted this right perhaps as an exception because of her being a queen, or maybe that the provisions of legal text were not implemented uniformly. So we come to know that the inscription that the rural population included the Brahman, the peasants and other. They were supposed to provide a range of produce to the king or his representatives. So the villager would have to obey the new lords of the village and perhaps pay him all the dues. So the land granted to Brahman, they were known as Agrahar. Okay, the Brahman, they were exempted from paying the land revenue and other dues to the kings. They were often given the right to collect due from the local peoples. To such land grants, inscriptions have been found from various parts of the country. There were regional variation in the size of the lands that are donated. In some inscriptions, we find mention of small plot of land given in donation, where some suggest that donation of a vast stretches of land. So it should also be kept in mind that the right given to the donees or the recipients of the grant also varied from region to region. So the scholar, they do not agree on the issue as why the king were inclined to make land grants. Some scholars suggest that the rulers wanted to extend the arable land by making such land grants. Some others feel that the ruler tried to gain support of the mighty and influential person by making such land grants. So it is an indicative of their weakening political power. A third group of the scholar, they feel that making these land grants, the king wanted to project themselves as a superman. Okay, the king were losing control and they wanted to present at least a facet of power by making such land grant.